The betrayal hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. There I was, standing in the middle of another one of Isabel's dinner parties in her pristine Kensington home, watching her perform what had become her favorite party trick. Me. "Oh, Zara, you absolutely must hear this," she announced to the room, her perfectly manicured fingers wrapped around a glass of expensive wine. "Say sausages and sunshine again, darling. But really lean into that Eastern European thing you do." The room went quiet. 8 pairs of eyes turned to me, waiting for the show to begin. I felt my cheeks burn with a humiliation so deep it reached my very soul. I had moved to London from Prague 18 months earlier, carrying nothing but 2 suitcases, a translation degree, and dreams bigger than the Thames. The visa paperwork had been a bureaucratic nightmare that lasted 6 months. The rent prices were absolutely criminal. I was paying more for a shoebox in Zone 3 than my parents paid for their 3-bedroom flat in the heart of Prague. But making friends? That had seemed surprisingly easy. Until this moment. "Come on, Zara," Isabel pressed, her voice dripping with that particular brand of British condescension I had learned to recognize. "Everyone thinks your accent is absolutely adorable." Adorable. Like I was a pet performing tricks. I forced a smile that felt like swallowing glass. "Perhaps later, Isabel." But she would not let it go. She never did. "Oh, but it is just so authentically Eastern Bloc, is it not? The way you roll those Rs, the way you say fata instead of water. It is like having our very own little Russian doll, except you are Czech." The laughter that followed was polite but painful. These people, her people, saw me as entertainment, a curiosity, a living stereotype to amuse them during their wine-soaked evenings. I excused myself to the bathroom and stared at my reflection in her gold-framed mirror. My grandmother's words echoed in my mind. "Zara, your voice is your power. Never let anyone make you ashamed of who you are." But standing there, listening to the muffled laughter from the dining room, I felt powerless. I felt small. That night marked the beginning of my transformation. The next morning, I made a decision that would change everything. I had been working as a freelance translator and tutor during the day, helping British students navigate Czech literature and businesspeople prepare for meetings in Prague. But at night, in the tiny recording corner of my cramped flat, I had been experimenting with something entirely different. Voice work. It had started innocently enough. I would practice character voices while reading bedtime stories to my niece over video calls. Witchy crones with gravelly whispers. Pirate queens with commanding roars. Flirty French detectives with sultry undertones. I discovered that accents were not limitations. They were superpowers. They carried entire worlds of story and emotion. My accent, the very thing Isabel mocked, was actually my greatest asset. I began recording sample reels, uploading them to voiceover websites, and reaching out to independent producers. My Czech lilt, combined with my fluency in 5 languages, made me unique in a sea of identical British voices. 3 weeks after that humiliating dinner party, I received an email that made my hands tremble. "Dear Miss Zara," it read, "we received your contact information from a client in Prague who was extremely impressed with your audiobook work. We represent several animation studios in Los Angeles and would love to discuss potential opportunities. Are you available for a phone consultation?" My heart hammered against my ribcage as I read those words over and over again. Los Angeles. Animation studios. This was my chance. The phone call that followed was unlike anything I had ever experienced. "We have been searching for authentic European voices for months," the agent explained, her American accent warm and encouraging. "Hollywood has been criticized for using fake accents, and studios are desperately seeking genuine talent. Your demo reel is exactly what we have been looking for." Within 2 weeks, I was auditioning remotely for 3 different projects. The process was intense. Hours of script reading, character development, and technical adjustments. But for the first time in months, I felt alive. I felt valuable. Then came the call that shattered every limitation I had placed on myself. "Congratulations, Zara. You have booked the lead role in Pixar's upcoming feature film." I collapsed onto my tiny sofa, tears streaming down my face. Pixar. The studio that had defined my childhood, that had made me believe in magic and possibility. and they wanted my voice. My Czech voice. The voice Isabel had turned into a punchline. Moving to Los Angeles felt like stepping into an alternate reality. The talent visa process was grueling, but this time, I had an entire legal team supporting me. Pixar arranged temporary housing in Burbank, and suddenly I found myself surrounded by palm trees and endless sunshine instead of London rain, and Isabel's condescending smirks. The character they had created was called Nina, a brilliant hedgehog inventor with a gentle Czech lilt and a heart full of unshakable courage. She was everything I aspired to be. Confident, innovative, and unapologetically herself. Working with the Pixar team was magical in ways I could never have imagined. The dialect coaches did not want to erase my accent. They wanted to enhance it, to make it more expressive and authentic. The animators studied my facial expressions, incorporating my gestures and mannerisms into Nina's movements. The writers crafted dialogue that celebrated linguistic diversity, rather than mocking it. Your accent tells a story, the director explained during one of our sessions. It speaks of journeys taken, of courage to start over, of the beauty in being different. That is what makes Nina special. That is what makes you special. For months, I poured my soul into that character. Every recording session was a cathartic release of years of shame and self-doubt. Nina became my voice, and through her, I found my power. The movie premiered on Christmas Day, and the response was overwhelming. Critics praised Nina's refreshingly genuine voice and authentic charm. Children fell in love with her instantly. The merchandise, plush toys, costumes, books flew off shelves faster than the studio could restock. But the most satisfying response came from an unexpected source. My phone buzzed with a message from Isabel 3 days after the premiere. OMG Zara. I just took the girls to see the new Pixar film, and they are obsessed with this hedgehog character. She has the most adorable accent. Reminds me of someone I know. Winking face, hope you are well in LA. I stared at that message for a full 5 minutes, a smile slowly spreading across my face. She had no idea. Over the following weeks, the messages continued. Photos of her daughters dressed as Nina for Halloween. Videos of them attempting the accent during breakfast. Voice notes of them reciting Nina's most inspirational quotes. "Mummy, do I sound like her now?" her youngest daughter asked in one video. "No, sweetheart," Isabel replied, clearly frustrated. "You do not sound anything like her." The irony was absolutely delicious. The same woman who had mocked my accent for months was now desperately trying to teach her children to replicate it. The voice she had treated as entertainment was now their inspiration. I began receiving interview requests from international media. Entertainment Weekly featured me in their Voices to Watch segment. The Hollywood Reporter wrote a full-page article about authentic representation in animation. Zara Novak represents a new generation of voice artists who bring genuine cultural experiences to their characters, one critic wrote. Her performance as Nina proves that authenticity resonates far more powerfully than artificial perfection. 6 months after the premiere, I received the message I had been waiting for. "Zara, I cannot believe I am just now finding out that you are the voice of Nina. The girls are absolutely going to lose their minds when they find out I actually know you. We must arrange a meeting. They would be thrilled to meet their hero." I read that message while sitting in my new Hollywood Hills apartment, looking out at the city that had embraced me exactly as I was. The woman who had once made me feel ashamed of my voice was now begging for access to it. But instead of responding immediately, I did something better. I went to my recording studio. Yes, I now had my own studio. And spent the afternoon creating something special. A personalized message from Nina to Isabel's daughters, encouraging them to embrace their own unique voices and never let anyone make them feel small. Then I packaged it with a signed poster and a handwritten note. To Isabel. Thank you for teaching me the true power of voice. Sometimes the things people mock us for are exactly what make us extraordinary. Your daughters have beautiful voices of their own. I hope they never let anyone convince them otherwise. With gratitude, Zara Novak, also known as Nina the Hedgehog, you know that adorable Eastern European accent you used to love so much. The response came within hours. Zara, I am so sorry. I never realized how my comments must have made you feel. The girls are absolutely over the moon about the message, and honestly, I am incredibly proud to know you. What you have accomplished is amazing. And I hope you can forgive a foolish friend who did not recognize brilliance when it was sitting right across from her. I appreciated the apology, but forgiveness was not something she needed from me anymore. I had already moved far beyond the pain she had caused. Nina's success had opened doors I never knew existed. I was now the voice of 3 different animated series, had signed a multi-year contract with a major streaming platform, and was developing my own production company, focused on authentic international storytelling. The greatest victory came exactly 1 year after that first humiliating dinner party. I was back in London for the UK premiere of Nina's television spin-off series. The event was being held at the Leicester Square Theatre, with red carpets and photographers and all the glamour I had once only dreamed of. As I walked down that red carpet, wearing a gown that cost more than my first year's rent in London, I spotted a familiar face in the crowd behind the barriers. Isabel, holding her 2 daughters' hands, both girls wearing Nina costumes and carrying homemade signs that read, "We love Nina," and "Czech accents are cool." Our eyes met across the chaos of flashing cameras and shouting reporters. She smiled, a real smile, full of genuine pride and perhaps a touch of regret. I walked over to the barrier and knelt down to meet her daughters at eye level. "Hello, beautiful girls," I said, letting my accent flow freely and proudly. "I hear you are fans of Nina." Their faces lit up like Christmas morning. "You sound just like her," the older daughter gasped. "We practice every day," the younger one added seriously. "Mummy says we sound terrible, but we do not care." I looked up at Isabel, who had gone pale as understanding dawned on her face. "You should never stop practicing," I told the girls. "Your voices are perfect exactly as they are. Never let anyone tell you otherwise." As I stood to leave, Isabel caught my arm gently. "Zarai," she started, her voice thick with emotion. "I am so incredibly sorry. And so incredibly proud." I nodded, understanding passing between us without need for more words. The little girl who had been made to feel ashamed of her accent was gone. In her place stood a woman who had transformed mockery into magic, who had turned her greatest vulnerability into her most powerful strength. Today, as I prepare for the recording of Nina's 3rd season, I think about all the children around the world who hear her voice and feel proud of their own unique accents. I receive letters from kids in Poland, Hungary, Romania, and the Czech Republic, telling me that Nina made them feel brave about speaking English with their natural pronunciations. Parents write to thank me for creating a character who celebrates linguistic diversity, rather than hiding it. But perhaps the most precious letter came from a 7-year-old girl in London. "Dear Nina, my mummy used to say my accent was funny, but now she says it is beautiful like yours. Thank you for teaching her that different voices make the world more colorful. Love, Anya. P.S. I am Czech too." The circle was complete. The thing about voices, our real, authentic, unpolished voices, is that they carry our entire histories. Every rolled R tells the story of a grandmother's lullabies. Every softened consonant speaks of late nights studying by candlelight. Every unique pronunciation is a badge of courage, proof that we dared to venture beyond the borders of our comfort zones. Isabel's mockery had tried to convince me that my voice was something to be hidden, something to be ashamed of. But in reality, it was my greatest treasure, my most powerful tool, my truest expression of self. Now, when young voice actors ask me for advice, I tell them this: never let anyone convince you that your authentic self is not enough. The thing that makes you different is often the very thing that makes you irreplaceable. The entertainment industry is finally learning what I discovered in that tiny London flat. Authenticity cannot be manufactured, and genuine voices resonate far more powerfully than perfect imitations. As I finish writing this story, I can hear children playing in the park outside my window, some of them attempting Nina's accent as they recreate scenes from the movies. It fills my heart with a joy so profound it brings tears to my eyes. That little girl who stood humiliated in Isabel's dining room could never have imagined this moment. She could never have envisioned a world where her voice, her beautiful, accented, imperfect, perfectly authentic voice, would be celebrated by millions. But sometimes the most beautiful transformations begin with the deepest pain. Sometimes we must be broken down completely before we can rebuild ourselves into who we were always meant to be. And sometimes, just sometimes, The people who try to diminish our light end up being the very ones who push us toward our brightest flames. So to anyone reading this who has ever been made to feel ashamed of their voice, their accent, their unique way of being in this world, your difference is your strength. Your authenticity is your superpower. And somewhere out there, the world is waiting to fall in love with exactly who you are. Do not let them silence you. Let them hear you roar.